Welcome to Giants Latest. ESPN draft analyst Matt Miller dropped his 7-round mock draft for the Giants, among other teams. But let's obviously talk through the Giants mock draft that he did because I like a lot of the picks that he made and where he picked them, especially in regards to the positions of the players. So let's get right into it. He has Cam Ward going number 1 to the Titans and Abdul Carter number 2 going to the Browns, which would leave the Giants with the option of either Shedeur Sanders, quarterback, or Travis Hunter, wide receiver, defensive back. Matt Miller has them taking at 3 Shedeur Sanders, which I think a lot of us think is probably going to be an option if that happens with the Browns. Obviously, there's a lot going on right now. It's hard to really say what they're going to do. They're having private workouts with Cam Ward and Sanders and, all of these different players. And Abdul Carter has his pro day today. So obviously going to be very interesting to see how things shake out. But I do think if Sanders is there on the board at 3, I think there is well more than a 50% chance that the Giants go ahead and take him. At pick number 34, he has the Giants staying put and picking Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver from Ohio State. At pick number 65, he has them taking Darius Alexander, the defensive tackle from Toledo. Pick number 99 is Barrett Carter, a linebacker from Clemson. Pick number 105 is Braden Swinson, an edge from LSU. Pick number 154, which is a trade he has via Seattle. They take Jalen Travis, who's a tackle from Iowa State. Pick number 219, Brashard Smith, running back from SMU. And then lastly, at pick number 246, they have Xavier Truss, a guard from Georgia. So here's what I like about this mock draft. I'm on board with Shedeur Sanders. Cam Ward is my number 1 guy, but I do think that it would be nice to have another quarterback in the building. However, I don't think that the way that the quarterback room is set up right now, that's a necessity. So I think they can pass over Shedeur Sanders and go for someone like Travis Hunter. The thing that I like about Travis Hunter versus Shedeur Sanders, because of what they did in free agency, is that Travis Hunter is going to start day 1. He's going to get the first set of snaps, whether it's on offense or defense. And I like that he's going to be a day 1 blue chip starter, where Shedeur Sanders, obviously we have the potential for him and we know he's going to play at some point. I just don't think that we're certainly not going to see him week 1. And I don't know when we would see him at that point. And part of my thinking is like, well, if we're not going to see Shedeur until week 12 or possibly even later, like if Russ Wilson and Jameis Winston, or just one of them, is winning the Giants football games, they're not playing Shedeur Sanders or any quarterback at that point. So part of me feels like, well, you can punt the quarterback to 2026 when there's more available and better caliber quarterbacks, if you're winning football games this year. So TBD on that. I like the Egbuka wide receiver pick. I'm not 100% sold on getting a wide receiver at 34 because they picked a wide receiver 6th overall last year, obviously in Malik Neighbors. The year before that, they picked Wan'Dale Robinson. They picked Jalen Hyatt. This front office has drafted a good amount of wide receivers. And while I do think we need more help in the wide receiver room, I'm not sold on picking one at 34, although I think this is a fine pick. I just don't know if he would necessarily be the best player available. I like in the 3rd round getting Darius Alexander, the defensive tackle. I think we've talked ad nauseum that we would like to see another defensive tackle in this draft, especially knowing that it is such a good defensive tackle heavy draft and the Giants need the help. Barrett Carter, linebacker from Clemson. I went to University of South Carolina, so I unfortunately know quite well that Clemson is a very good football team like UGA, and they breed very good football players, just as Dexter Lawrence. So I do like the idea of another Clemson player coming here, and, a linebacker is a position of need, I think, for the Giants. Next up is Swinson, the edge from LSU. Again, if they're not going after someone like Carter and if they're not going after someone like Hunter, then you have to bring in a wide receiver at some point. You have to bring in another edge at some point. So I like the pick. Listen, as an SEC person, I love the SEC. I think they really breed the best of the best when it comes to college football. So I like LSU too, obviously. Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels, the list goes on. Next up, Jalen Travis, a tackle from Iowa State. I am on board with the Giants getting a guard and a tackle in the draft, which is what this mock draft says. I like it. Running back in it's pick 219, so probably round 6, end of round 6 at that point. fine with it. I'm not so sure that they need a running back, but this is a deep running back class. And if they feel like there's good value in round 6 for a running back, then so be it. And then last up, Xavier Truss, the guard from Georgia. I have said this extensively. If you guys have been around here for a while, you know how I feel about UGA players. It's very unfortunate, like I said, being a Gamecock alum. I don't know what the University of Georgia does, but everyone that seems to come out of that program succeeds in the NFL. And I would take that. I would be on board with that. So works for me. So let me know what you guys think about the 7-round mock draft. Obviously, we got another month of this. I'm sure a lot is going to change until then. Let's move along now and talk about the wide receivers, because like we talked about, if they don't go after Travis Hunter at 3, then they should bring in another wide receiver in the draft. Yes, they've made some free agent signings, but when you look at the wide receivers, it's essentially the same wide receiver room as it was last year when it comes to the starters. Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, Malik Neighbors, God knows about Jalen Hyatt, maybe, maybe not. But those 3 are the ones that we're going to see in the bulk of the rotation. And nothing is new there. There's not really any upgrades. And Malik Neighbors doesn't need an upgrade. I think Darius Slayton is good enough. But I do think that, someone like Zach Pascal or, little Jordan Humphrey, I don't really think that those guys are going to step in and really beat out Wan'Dale Robinson for the slot position or anything like that. Emir Smith-Marset, I'd like to keep him on special teams. He's a good, okay wide receiver. I'm not dying to see him built into this offense. I would rather see them go after someone in the draft, especially if it's someone like a Travis Hunter. So overall, I give the wide receiver room as a whole grade a B. I think there is a lot of untapped potential there, especially when it comes to someone like Jalen Hyatt. I think that Darius Slayton, after his production fell off last year with Daniel Jones being released, I expect to see a resurgence from Darius Slayton this year. He's done a really nice job of fixing some of his drop issues. So I hope that between him, Neighbors, and Wan'Dale, that our wide receivers can have a good season this year. But I would love another wide receiver in the mix, because I just don't feel confident that we are going to see a lot of Jalen Hyatt and that we're going to see a good Jalen Hyatt. And I want that. I like Jalen Hyatt. I think he has potential. I don't really know what's happening behind the scenes. I don't know why he's getting the snaps. The best case scenario is that it works out for him. He's already on the roster. It saves us from having to, potentially waste draft picks, if you will, to bring in other wide receivers. But, I want it to work out with Jalen Hyatt. But if it's not going to work out and he's not part of their future, then they need to draft another wide receiver. And I would like to see them do that, either with Travis Hunter or in the 2nd or 3rd round. Let's move along to the guards. I want to talk about the top 3 guards in the draft this year, because obviously this is a position of need for the Giants. And I do think that a lot of the 7-round mock drafts that come out are going to have the Giants picking a guard at some point. We already spoke briefly about the guard from Georgia, but he's not even close, obviously, to one of the top 5 or top 10 guards in the draft. So let's talk about some of the names to recognize that will be talked about a lot over the next month or so. Number 1 is Tyler Booker. He's a guard from Alabama. Now, I know. We are all scarred from Evan Neal being a guard/tackle from Alabama and what he has done for the Giants. I know. And listen, Alabama is one of my least favorite teams in the SEC and in college football as a whole. So I'm not really dying to bring in a guard from Alabama. But for the sake of argument here, because he is rated as one of the top guards in the draft, we have to talk about him. He's 6'5", 321 pounds. His 40 time was a 5.38. I don't really think that matters all that much. I don't expect the offensive linemen to be running their asses off down the field. So we already have enough illegal man down the field penalties. Let's rein it in, shall we? Anyway, he's projected to go in the 1st round, so I don't really think that he's going to be a guy that the Giants are going to be going after anyway, but he is a guy to keep your eyes peeled and your ears peeled for, because you never know when it comes to the draft how these guys can fall. He was extremely dominant in 2024. He's a true power run blocker who can regularly knock defenders back and push them out of his gap. So a lot of positive things about Booker being said out there, which is why he is rated the number 1 in the draft. And for the sake of this video not going on for 25 minutes, I'm going to move along to the next. Donovan Jackson, guard from Ohio State. He's 6'4", 315 pounds. His 40 time was around the same at 5.4. Now, he's projected to go between rounds 1 and round 2. So my estimation with this is probably a late 2nd round, maybe early late first round, maybe early second round. So with that being said, he could be an option for the Giants at pick 34 because it is such an early second round pick. So this might be a guy for all of us Giants fans to really keep our ears in on because of where he's projected to go in the draft. So a little bit about him. He missed a few games to start the 2024 season with some sort of injury that I guess was never disclosed, but he played really well ever since he returned to the field for Ohio State. Very strong run blocker and reliable in pass protection. He moved to left tackle and has held up well playing out of position. So the more I hear about him, the more I like about him, because if God forbid Andrew Thomas goes down, he has that left tackle experience. Again, this is at least not an Alabama player, so maybe we're going to be a little bit less scarred about moving a guard to tackle. I don't know. You tell me. I have PTSD from everything surrounding this offensive line, so... And I'm not even a quarterback who's had to deal with it. So God bless to them. A couple other notes here. So in 2023, Jackson was mostly at left guard. He played very solid football for Ohio State. Run blocking could be ranked ahead of his pass protection for the NFL, but he has starting potential for the next level. So good experience with Ohio State. He was a tough blocker in 2022, blasting open holes in the ground game and doing a steady job of protecting CJ Stroud. He also has upside to develop. So I like Carmen Bricillo. I think what he's done with this offensive line has been pretty good. I think if we can see a decent Evan Neal in a guard position, same thing with Azudu, I will feel like if they draft a guard or tackle that has some potential and has some work to be done, that Carmen Bricillo can help this out. Okay, last one here. Marcus Embo, guard from Purdue. 6'4", 303 pounds, 40 time was 5.1. He's projected to go anywhere from rounds 2 to 4. So I've heard a lot about Marcus. I don't know how to pronounce his name, so we're going to stick with Marcus here, his last name. Nice interior athlete who has quickness and athleticism. He could stand to get a little bit stronger and clean up some technique, but he has the skill set to be a solid starting guard as a pro. So love to hear that. Two more guards names just for you guys to be familiar with. From LSU, Garrett Dillinger. He's projected to go rounds 3 to 5. And then another LSU guard, Miles Frazier. He's also projected to go rounds 3 to 5. So Frazier played right guard, and then Dillinger played left tackle and center and guard. And left guard. So a lot of experience across the whole line there. Again, we know from this front office staff across the board that they like versatility, especially when it comes to the linemen. All right, let's wrap it up here by talking about Shane Bowen. I want to move over to talking about the defense, because yesterday I said that there are reasons to be optimistic about this team. And when I say optimistic, to me, optimistic doesn't equate to wins. There's optimism that we will see a better offense that can score more than 10 points. There's optimism for me as a fan that this defense is going to shape up quite well. On paper, it looks a lot better than it did this time last year, right? We've got a veteran safety, we got a veteran cornerback that are new to the building. We've got, Deonte Banks going into his third year, who hopefully is going to turn it around. You've got Drew Phillips, who had an incredible rookie year. Same thing, Tyler Nubin had a good, not great, but I think because of the injury, we're going to see a better Tyler Nubin this year. So you've got young guys that are holding up well. You've got Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns, who are stepping into themselves. I really like Burns. I think he's going to be a really solid piece this year. And of course, you've got Dexter Lawrence, who is not excited about getting to see Dexter Lawrence play football for the New York Giants this year. So to me, the biggest concern with the defense outside of the health is the number one asterisk across the board when it comes to the Giants. If everyone is healthy, there's no reason why they shouldn't be a better football team. Outside of the schedule, it is what it is. But the defense, my biggest concern is Shane Bowen, because when you look at someone, especially like Kayvon Thibodeau, and I think Brian Burns too, but Kayvon I can speak better to because of his history with the Giants. His best years came under Wink. He was most successful with the most amount of sacks. His run defense was better when they were blitzing more often. He was better at getting to the quarterback. He was better at making tackles. His tackle numbers were significantly higher. I don't know, if it was really just about this scheme, but whatever Wink had going on with them, they really did a nice job. And the missed tackles with the Giants have been an issue for the last couple of years. And, think that they've made some changes over the coaching staff, which I hope will help. They were a little bit better last year. I expect it to get even better this year. Like every year we should be improving, right? So the question here for me is Bowen going to adjust the scheme to fit the players? Because he hasn't done it in the past. He didn't do it last year. And I'm sure that he had gripes about the talent, which is fine. But at some point, you have to look inward and say, this is what I'm working with. These are their strengths. I need to take advantage of it and adjust the scheme to their strengths. I can't just say, well, I'm a good run defensive coach, and that's the scheme that I'm going to run when the run defenders suck, right? Not going to work out. So I really want to see Bowen make some changes this year. And to me, that's the biggest concern that I have with this defense. So it's also a big concern for me because in theory and on paper, I think the talent is there. It's how is he going to adjust the scheme to fit the players? And, last year was a lot of like 3-4 and 4-3 and mixing it up that way. And I'm okay with the 4-3. Like I said, like, I think that was where we saw some success there. I want to see more blitzing. I want to see, if you're going to rely on the 4-3, then get Bobby Okereke in a position to succeed. I don't know what happened with him last year. This is a new year. Same thing with Tay Banks. Tay Banks had a god-awful year last year. And what's bizarre to me is that the year before when, yes, Kayvon had more sacks, but it was really only Kayvon who seemed to be, and Dexter Lawrence, who were doing most of the work there. But, Banks was left alone on islands with receivers, and he did a nice job covering them. So anyway, I want to see that change this year, and I hope that that's one of the things that we really can look forward to in watching this defense because they should be fun to watch. So Shane Bowen, you got to step up. You got to do your job, man. Stay tuned. Subscribe for more Giants latest.